Welcome to this webinar, which provides insights into self-evaluation in early educational contexts. This webinar places a focus on the early years provision in primary schools. It is informed by research and inspection findings from early years context and the advice given by inspectors to support ongoing improvement. This webinar is premised on the concept of self-evaluation as reflection on professional practice which leads to effective action that improves children's learning experiences and achievements. This webinar provides examples of self-evaluation practice that have proved particularly effective in early education contexts. We also provide valuable links to resources that support the development of SSE processes in school. These resources are mentioned throughout the webinar. Let us now consider the documentation pertaining to primary schools. School self-evaluation is well established in the primary school context. The school self-evaluation guidelines for primary schools and the Looking at Our School document, which you see here, inform schools' self-evaluation processes during the 2016 to 2020 period. Circular 0040/20 outlines the adjustments to arrangements for school self-evaluation and acknowledges that there will be no new requirements relating to SSE for the year 2020-2021. The SSE update and resources to support schools during the reopening phase are available on the website of the Department of Education. The circular encourages schools to use SSE to plan for and address the challenges involved in the return to schools, or to complete SSE work that would have been completed during the period March to June 2020. The Looking at Our Schools document and the SSE guidelines remain the key documents to guide SSE in primary schools. To complement and support SSE in early education contexts, we will draw on some examples of very effective SSE initiatives in early educational contexts. We will also highlight the resources that were found to be particularly useful. Let us first look at the landscape for school self-evaluation in Irish primary schools. Here you see the six-step process of the SSE cycle. SSE is not a series of one-off events, but a series of self-reflection and evaluative processes involving all key stakeholders. Effective self-evaluation processes focus on bringing about an improvement to an aspect of children's learning experiences or outcomes. Self-evaluation recognises the strengths and the challenges of each school community and enables stakeholders to work collaboratively to respond to the priorities identified. Firstly, step one is to identify a focus for possible improvement. It could, for example, be play-based learning or the use of concrete materials in progressing pupils' numeracy skills. Step two involves gathering some information that will inform the decision-making processes from which the priorities can be selected. It is not necessary to generate or amass paperwork or huge amounts of data. Gathering information from a variety of perspectives, including parents and children, yields many benefits. It provides a more complete picture of how things are working and impacting on the other stakeholders, and it promotes inclusion and transparency. As teachers and early year practitioners gather either qualitative or quantitative information, they note and affirm existing good practices. This can build professional confidence and promote consistency in collective practices. The information will draw attention to practice requiring improvement. Where inspectors note most effective practice, the information is used purposefully to make decisions and monitor progress. Some effective information gathering practices include the use of children's drawing to illustrate their favourite places for socio-dramatic play and audio messages recorded by parents. Step 3 is a critical stage of the SSE cycle and centres on making judgments. This involves using the information to recognise the strengths, to determine the priorities, and to decide on the aspects of practice for further development. It feeds directly into Step 4, which involves considering and agreeing a plan to effect improvement in the prioritised areas. It's vitally important to share the plan, delineate the roles, and determine how progress will be monitored. Step 5. To effectively implement the plan, everyone needs to have a clear understanding of the agreed actions and all the necessary resources and knowledge to implement it. Step 6 involves monitoring the implementation of the agreed actions while being cognizant of any intended and unintended effects of the improvement initiatives. Where inspectors note best practice, there is evidence of high levels of teamwork, mentoring, and shared leadership roles. Another distinguishing feature of best practice is the inclusion of the voices of children and parents in the self-evaluation processes. We will now explore how self-evaluation is a collaborative process that involves listening to and acting on the views and perspectives of the other stakeholders at various stages of the SSE cycle. Consultation with children and their parents in particular can yield valuable information about their experiences of school and learning and how improvement initiatives or changes may be impacting on them. Of course, members of the Board of Management may also have insights to offer regarding the school, teaching and learning. A number of very effective SSE and improvement initiatives have focused on enhancing communication and collaboration between the school community and local early learning and care settings. Of course, a child's transition from setting to school is of great significance. A separate Insights webinar focused on these transitions. In addition, the NCCA have developed many useful resources to support schools and settings who are using SSE to enhance their transition practices. We will now look at how the early years inspection framework and resources could be used to support professional reflection and school self-evaluation in the context of infant classes in Irish schools. The quality framework for early years education inspection is underpinned by Asheshields and Shields, which are shown on screen. These frameworks centre on providing high-quality educational provision for children aged 0 to 6 years. To this end, the frameworks emphasise the importance of systematic and continuous self-evaluation and reflective professional practices. Inspection findings also indicate that there is a positive correlation between robust SSE and very high quality in teaching and learning. Similarly, individual and collaborative professional reflection is recognised as a critical factor in maximising the quality of children's learning experiences and outcomes in early learning and care settings. A strength-based approach to SSE, where strengths are recognised and affirmed, has proved empowering for teachers and EY practitioners as they respond to the prioritised needs collaboratively. In early years contexts, ongoing professional reflection often involves teachers and practitioners using questions such as, what is working well, and for whom, and how do we know? What progress and positivities do we see that we can build on? The Guide to Early Years Inspection and Inspection Framework depicted on the slides contains information which could be used as a resource to support professional reflection and self-evaluation. The EY-EI framework consists of 4 interrelated areas, each of which has a number of associated outcomes. For example, Area 2, which looks at the aspects of quality of processes to support children's learning and development, includes 8 specific outcomes covering aspects of provision such as play, interactions, inclusive practice, planning and assessment. Each of the 8 outcomes in turn have a number of signposts which illustrates aspects of best practice. The next slide looks at the signposts associated with the first outcome in section 2, which focuses on embedding Ashtar. As you see, the outcome selected focuses on how provision is informed by Ashtar in an early learning and care setting. The outcome is accompanied by a selection of signposts that are not intended to be either prescriptive or definitive. Engaging with these signposts can support professional reflection and SSE, and teachers can identify and affirm strengths in their practice and consider actions that will promote further improvement in teaching and learning. The signposts provided for each outcome can support individual or collaborative professional reflection as teachers and practitioners establish strengths and determine priorities for improvement. The outcomes and signposts available in the guide can support you as you gather information and make decisions as part of the school's self-evaluation and improvement initiatives. Outcome 9 of the Early Years Education Inspection Framework looks at how emergent language, literacy and numeracy skills are fostered. The signposts accompanying this outcome are used to support professional reflection and gathering, which could lead to the identification of an improvement priority. The writing in purple illustrates aspects of practice which teachers identified as strengths, and in green you can see the aspects identified for further development. The teachers were of the opinion that they modelled appropriate language and vocabulary for children, although they agreed the balance of speaking and listening during their interactions with children could benefit from further attention. Whilst the teachers noted the good supply of books, they acknowledged that the books were not always aligned to children's emerging interests or play activities. The teachers then developed an action plan with a number of improvement initiatives. Staff engaged in a workshop to further develop their active listening skills and their use of open-ended prompts and questions to engage children in conversation and sustain shared thinking. Teachers agreed to use listening to children regularly as an assessment approach for a specified number of learning observations. Teachers also agreed to theme and position books in the various discrete play and exploration areas within the classroom. Teachers agreed to consult children each week about the types of books they would most like to read to enable them to pursue their interests. Children and their parents were consulted to ascertain the impact of these initiatives on children's interest in reading and towards school in general. The review of the school's self-evaluation initiative informed long and short-term curricular planning, and there was a sustained emphasis on monitoring the balance of speaking and listening in interactions during play and learning activities. Many teachers and practitioners report that reflecting on an aspect of practice through a single signpost can help considerably to embed Ashtar and other curricular initiatives. While some like to work from the granular towards the bigger pictures, others prefer to work from the big picture back to the details of practice. Next, we will consider how self-evaluation practices can be used to successfully embed Ashtar in early educational contexts. It is helpful to reflect on the 4 themes of Ashtar and how they permeate practice in our classrooms and schools. This is a useful exercise to affirm what is going well and also to highlight areas for improvement. The Ashtar themes of well-being, identity and belonging might be priorities for development in your school's self-evaluation work following recent school closures and the potential impact of the pandemic on children. In addition to the Ashtar document itself and the Guide to Early Years Education Inspections, there are many resources which support individual and collaborative professional SSE in early educational contexts. There are 4 sets of guidelines which have been produced to support teachers and early years practitioners to adopt Ashtar. These focus on the themes now shown on the screen. To simplify self-evaluation processes and to provide entry points into Ashtar and Shielda, the Asheshields Practice Guide was made available in 2015. Inspectors frequently note a strong association between the regular use of the Asheshields Practice Guide, very effective self-evaluation, and high-quality teaching and learning in early years contexts. The Asheshields Practice Guide consists of 6 interconnected pillars of practice, which provide very useful entry points for self-evaluation. Each section or pillar contains resources to support individual or collaborative reflection on aspects of practice. These include tools that can frame professional reflection, discussion and planning. They also include examples of approaches and possible action plans to support improvement. Here you see all of the titles of the pillars on the screen. In many instances where inspectors note best practice, the pillars of the guide have been used to support the development of more child-led learning and collaborative learning activities. Here is a list of resources which you might find useful in developing self-evaluation and professional reflection practices at individual, team and whole school level. Please use the dedicated email address to send your comments and queries to us at insights_info@education.gov.ie. Many thanks for listening to this webinar.